where am I projecting my desires and egos and wants and things onto this person's life and
Yeah.
making it about me?
Hello, Lauren. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are
Very
you?
good. I'm very, very well. And I'm even better for speaking to you, my friend. Um, Welcome to everybody who's tuning in to the How Change Changes You podcast. I'm joined by the lovely Lauren here, a fellow coach, and we are going to be talking about Lauren's change story. Before we jump in to all of that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Lauren, so you can introduce your lovely self to the people watching or listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Introduction to the people. I am Lauren Pla. My coaching practice is called Hineni Coaching, which is it is a Hebrew word. My family grew up Jewish. I grew up Jewish, so it's not based in religion, but the word itself does mean here I am. And I had a very interesting story as to how I even found that name, but it worked really well because my passion as a coach is to really empower the human spirit and the authenticity of people, of anybody, to sort of not live lives that other people think you should live, and really kind of radically accepting who you are and maybe marching to the beat of your own drummer. So I was felt really fortunate to find that name, and I focus most of my coaching up until now has really I have attracted those types of clients that really just sort of needed to recognize that they were living their lives by other people's terms. That sort of just was a theme that kept coming up, so it worked really well. But I am transitioning my focus into teen and parent coaching now, which is how I have found myself here with you, my dear, because that is a change that I went through personally and then also professionionally. I'm going into that space. So there's lots of change. No shortage of change over here.
Yeah, we said we're not going to run out of changes to talk about for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, no, and you're based out of New Jersey, is that right?
I am. Yes,
Yeah.
I am in New Jersey, USA.
Cool. I was gonna give her my New Jersey accent, but it's
Yes, New Jersey.
New Jersey. But I won't go too far down that because my accent isn't that great. So as you've already mentioned, and so you have two children yourself, is that right?
I do. I have a 16-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter. Yeah.
And what, for people listening, just to kind of kick off, I suppose, as you've mentioned, going through this transition of, being a coach and attracting people. I mean, that's definitely where you and I, have vast amounts in common of just this authenticity piece and marching to the beat of your own drum and actually really getting super clear on what that is and why that's so important and so empowering for people. What's the kind of antithesis of the change story that you would like to share, if you kind of if we slip into it? What are the kind of main changes that you've recently been going through?
I mean, in terms of this topic, I would say that the biggest, gosh, there is so much meat here. The biggest change that I have gone through as a parent um, has really been coming to an understanding through lots of inner work and following a lot of experts um, that I trust and I believe in, because there are experts all over in different realms of theory. Um, my biggest change was recognizing some trauma in myself that directly related or triggered when my kids were a certain age. And so and I mean, I have, I'm very tongue in cheek, and my personality. So like, if there's not humor, there's nothing. So like, I can be very humorous about it, but it's like, I was crazy. Like I became a crazy parent. I thought I was going to be the coolest, chillest, like, I get you, like, we're
mm,
good. Like, my
mm,
kid's going to smoke pot and I'm not going to care. This,
mm, mm, mm,
by the way, not how it actually happened for me. I completely freaked out. And then came to kind of realize through the work that I started doing, because I just recognized that I was out of my mind.
mm,
And so, the changes that came around for me were recognizing to release what my ego was telling me, that I even had control of anything.
mm,
And that my desires and my intentions and what I thought I was supposed to do as a parent to raise my kids
mm,
was utter bullshit.
mm,
Um, and recognizing that they're on their own journey that is only meant to be supported by me and not crafted by me.
mm,
Um, and kind of learning that, like, all of my issues with my kids was all about me and
mm,
not even remotely about them.
mm,
Lots of stuff, lots of stuff
mm.
coming up around that. And then
Yeah.
having come to that understanding, and really it makes sense to me. That's the thing, is that
Mm,
this theory makes sense to me, and it is
mm,
why I am attached to it so much.
mm.
I'm going to plug Dr. Shafali, Saburi Shafali. If you have show notes or whatever you may want to,
Yes, we'll include
because
them below. Yeah.
she's like my guru. I mean, she's where I learned this conscious parenting and
Mm,
the
mm,
conscious family, and
mm,
conscious everything, conscious
mm.
intimacy and conscious relationships.
Yeah.
So it was that, learning that about myself and applying that as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
and applying that in a way that I can now bring that to adolescents and teens and their parents,
Mm,
to open them up to a more conscious conversation and a more
mm,
conscious life experience,
mm, mm.
which I just think is, it's for me, it's magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like your ongoing inner journey is really a vast part has focused on your role as a parent. And naturally, I guess for any parent, you want the best for your child. And I think it was really interesting that you said, the supported versus crafted.
Mhm.
So as you kind of had this realization of the inner work that you were doing, and then this realization of like, oh, wait there, it's not about them as such, it's about me. It's like you're looking through your lens. I'm just curious, I guess, for those parents listening who think, well, conscious parenting, what's that then?
Yeah.
Would you be able to kind of speak to what that is in a bit more detail?
Yeah. So I hope one day to be actually formally educated in this theory. Like, I really, Shafali runs a program where I am just like running after this program. I think it's so powerful and magical. Um, it ultimately comes back to, as a human being, and people will have heard this outside of the parenting, because it applies to everything. When you hear, for instance, the cliche of, you can't love someone else until you love yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, but it's really, really broad.
Mm.
And a lot of people probably are like, yeah, how do I, I love myself, like, I
Yeah.
respect myself.
Yeah.
Um, but the actual practice of learning to love all parts of yourself unconditionally,
Mm.
um, and then how that then colors your outward relationships and how you're able to then love another person and connect with another person is so freaking profound. And so as a conscious parent,
Mm.
you're going inward and backward, and you're healing yourself and
Mm.
understanding yourself and learning to love your inner child and
Mm.
your current self,
Mm.
before you can,
Mm.
I don't want to say love your child, like obviously you love your child, but
Yes.
it is everything that we do as parents,
Mm.
is about ourselves, and
Mm.
we don't realize that. Like I've
Mm.
always kind of made the joke, I'm sure I'm not the only one in the world to make this joke, but like we need a license to drive, you know. You need, for my son needs an ID, that he had to go through to prove that he can even go to his high school.
Mm.
You need certificates and licenses for like the dumbest shit. And
Mm.
then it's like, well, raise a human to be a good citizen of the
Yeah.
planet, where
Yeah.
like you're on your own, you know what I mean? Like, and there are books, right?
Mm.
We've got
Mm.
experts on, the Ferber, right? Ferberizing your baby, like let him cry, don't let him cry,
Mm.
don't let him,
Self-soothing. Yeah. Yeah.
self-soothing.
Mm.
And it's, who knows what all of this, but think of this for a minute. We have children, if it's planned.
Mm.
The only reason that you have a child is for egotistical
Mm.
purposes, and I
Mm.
don't mean that in a judgmental way.
Mm.
I mean that in a real psychological way.
Mm. The mini me's.
The mini me's, because we want to craft a human. We and it's out of love. It's out
Mm.
of love. It's the intentions are mostly pure. I mean,
Mm. Mm.
but
Mm.
when you realize that you're parenting your kids the way that you're either overdoing it or underdoing it based on what your parents did, right, wrong, and different. I can
Yeah.
do this better, right? It's like, oh, I grew up with lack
Mm.
and scarcity, and my parents worked 9 jobs and they weren't home,
Mm.
and I want to do better.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be all over my kid all of the time. We have to have
Mm.
family days 3 nights a week. I'm not going to give them any, I'm going to buy them whatever they want. Oh, they want a BMW. I'm getting them a BMW because I don't want them to experience the lack.
Yeah.
So, and I'm giving obviously extremes, but
Yeah.
these are the stories that really brought to awareness where I
Mm.
was doing things like that. Because,
Mm.
it's hard to hear. It's hard
Yes.
to hear. You don't want to be told as a parent
No.
that you're like, because you're like, I love my kid. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
I am not doing that. I get
No.
you.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes just hearing those things and how much it makes sense to where, maybe you're an immigrant family or grew up with immigrant parents and you
Mm.
didn't have the opportunity to go to college
Mm.
because you had to work at your father's store or your grandfather's store, right? And
Mm.
so
Mm. Mm.
you may have wanted to go to college, right? But you
Mm.
didn't get the opportunity. So when you have a child,
Mm.
that the importance of that college experience is so important to you that you inadvertently project it onto your kid and make it important for your kid.
Yeah.
And what your kid wants to do is, travel the world and with a guitar and play music and make
Mm.
$20 a night,
Mm.
just experience.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that we just have to that's where the conscious comes in. It's to
Yeah.
become consciously aware of, like, where am I projecting my
Mm.
desires and egos and wants and things onto this person's life and making
Yeah.
it about me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's beautifully explained, and it's powerful when you think about it, because we relate, like we are receivers of information and responders to information, and it is that kind of the give and take. I'm curious, I guess, from you noticing then, given that your son is now 16 and daughter 22, how's that change of you doing that inner work, how has that altered the way that you parent? Like, are there some specifics that you kind of go, well, I was doing that, but now I've learned not to do that?
I just laugh at this question because it's so funny because, my daughter was pre-conscious parenting
Right.
and my son is post.
Oh,
And
perfect. It's
my
like a
daughter,
hypothesis.
oh my gosh, it's just so funny. It's just, when you know better, do better. So like as I learned these things,
Yes.
I, implemented them based on the fact that I bought into them so much and I believe in them so much, right? So obviously, if I believe in it, I'm going to start using it.
Yeah.
And my daughter, oh my God, she will be like, what the hell happened to you? Like, she's like, what, what you have like, what did she say to me the other day? It was so funny. And I mean, it wasn't really funny, but she was being kind of serious, but it was, for me, it was really funny because she literally was like, you just gave up. Like, in her eyes, and I mean, my husband, I'm going to throw my husband under the bus here. He a little bit more than me. He's also like, parents were Cuban immigrant parents,
Right.
came here with nothing. So his experience as a child was different than mine. So he definitely has that kind of ancestral programming where he is like, if you're capable of getting A's, you should be getting A's.
Yeah.
And I get it. And I don't even necessarily disagree. It's just that in my experience and my feeling now, I'm like, if you really don't resonate with history and history doesn't light you up and do it for you, can we just pass history and put your effort into English if that's what you like, or art, or whatever? What's the subject you really like?
Yeah.
Let's worry about doing really well in that one and just passing the other ones.
Yeah.
But it's so I definitely see the difference. One of the biggest pillars of conscious parenting is connection.
Right.
Dr. Shafali teaches connection before correction.
Oh, I like that.
So really what that is it's an alert when we get triggered about something that our kid is doing before we blow up and react. And by the way, I still blow up and react quite often.
Of course, you're human.
I just know better.
Yeah.
Judge myself more
for judging yourself.
On how I behaved. Right.
Yeah.
But when we are triggered by something, if we can catch ourselves before we react, the question to ask is, what does the child need in this moment? And there are specific things that the child is lacking in that moment of acting out that we have to be aware of. So what it also really is, and this is a theme I have not practiced articulating this thought yet. So let's see if I can do it here. We're the parents and we're the adults. We're the ones in most cases that made the decision to have a child. So I believe that once we have done that, it's on us to take responsibility to understand that once you recognize and learn that you are not here to raise your child as a mini you, and you're here to support them become themselves, that's when it takes some work.
Yeah.
Parenting is not easy. If you expect it to be easy and you expect to put in, just a little bit of effort, you're probably not ultimately going to be doing the best that you can be doing for this spirit that came through you as your child.
Yeah.
And I do believe that we hold a responsibility where, as tiring as it is, we need to learn how to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And learn how to communicate. Like, it's the responsibility is on us to learn how to communicate with them, not to make them learn how to communicate in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And I think what comes up for me, and you mentioned before about your husband as well with the ancestral piece, it's almost that we have the responsibility and the power, actually, and the knowledge and tools now to break patterns, because it is, I mean, it's just like you've mentioned, programming. It's unconscious programming that runs through many of us, and it's through ancestral lineage, essentially. So I guess the power of what you're sharing is actually, it's not about controlling your child. It's not about having them do exactly what you want them to do.
Right.
It's beautifully, the way you put it, it's beautifully about, right, I see you. Yeah. What is it you're asking me for? And it's almost that, as a parent, being able to have that power and those tools to know that you can hold space. And that's huge, isn't it? Yeah. That's huge.
I love that. I love how you like articulated that back to me. It's I understand the fear. So I mentioned before, I started to recognize, and I consider myself an aware person, but I'm 46, and it wasn't until like 2 years ago that my therapist was like, "Are you not connecting the dots here with how your adolescence triggers with their?" And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like this was just a blind spot to me.
Yeah.
And the point just went in one ear and came out the other ear. To bring it to like a full circle, it's recognizing in my kids that they are these. That was where I was going. Okay, fine. Can you edit that out? No, I'm just kidding. All right.
It's all natural, baby.
The fear. That's what
the fear.
So
yes.
The fear. So my fears around how I experienced my adolescence and my teenage, because it wasn't awful. It definitely could have been worse, but I was in some unsafe situations. Where I didn't really feel too safe and probably didn't really want to be there, but that's where all my friends were. So, I will say, like, the angels were there for me, like definitely looking out for me and a couple of my friends. Like we could have been way worse off than we were. I don't really know why I was pulled into that world. I come from, on paper, my family was like perfect, loving, married, happy couple living, middle class. There's no like direct, like, broken family.
Yeah.
But the fear of what I was surrounded by and what could have happened for me is I project that shit out everywhere, and I did not realize it. And I was putting that on my kids.
Right.
And so to come back to your question, like, how has it affected? I still have my moments. Like it's trauma, it's PTSD for me. I'm more aware of it now than I was, and I'm learning through it, but it takes a lot of work. It takes, I have a coach that works with me on those specific things, and I will definitely see on the days that my energy is low and I'm just kind of feeling it for myself. I can visibly, my son will avoid me. I will notice that our interactions are not feeling connected.
Right.
And then to be fair, right, because it's just kind of easier for all the negative shit to come in than it is sometimes for the positive. It could take 1 hour of me having like a negative moment for like the whole world to collapse, and like I have to be in my positive like for 3 days before he like starts feeling attracted to me again. And
right.
I think what's really fascinating is when you do this kind of work as an individual, it expands to the collective, and so your kids are getting the effect of your work.
It's a ripple effect, isn't it? Which is beautiful, because I think what comes up for me as you share that is, I mean, I speak to this a lot about, friends and family who have children, and people that I coach. We forget sometimes that we are modeling behavior for those around us. So we are like actively demonstrating. And I
Yeah.
think, my parents and my parents' parents used to joke, it's a Victorian saying of don't do what I do what I say,
Yeah.
which is one of control. And I'm the adult, you're the child. And so, even, my dad's era, my dad's in his 80s now, but he grew up, children should be seen and not heard,
Right.
which is terrifying,
Right.
which is probably why we've got a lot of emotional rigidity and inability to process emotion, like, now with a lot of elderly.
Yeah.
But I think what was really interesting, what you said, is almost we naturally, it sounds like, have that proclivity to want to protect.
Yes.
And it sounds like the fear you had was what could have happened, you are well aware of. And so you don't want that.
Correct.
Unconsciously, you don't want that. Well, consciously and unconsciously, you don't want
Correct.
that for your child.
Correct. And, it's funny, my daughter, I just will not forget this. Like this hit me. This was like an energetic bitch slap if I ever had had one, but she didn't even realize what she was doing. But well, I'm in her room. So first of all, it's funny because I thought my daughter was tough when she was 16. Really, we kind of went at it from, I would say, like 13 through 16. So she kind of went early and came back early, and we've been really close. Like we keep getting closer. Now she's 22.
Yeah.
But if you had asked me, like, I was crying myself to sleep, we wouldn't talk. Like, I was like, thank God she had a relationship with my husband, because she and I we could not, it was like good morning was a problem. Like we just
Right.
could not even. And I was like, oh my God, like this was really hard. And everybody says boys are easy, and I'm like, this is how I feel about boys being easy.
Yeah.
At least in my experience.
Yeah.
Having said that, right, 90% of this is me. I am literally friggin' perpetuating the same thing. Only his energy, which makes sense to me now, is more sensitive than her energy.
Yeah.
He most likely is an empath. So I'm starting to explore that and how to potentially bring that up to him at some point, because I think that he absorbs a lot of emotions that he doesn't know what to do with. So
right.
It's a whole other thing.
Yes.
But with my son, it's like I was in the bedroom with my daughter, and with my son, I was having these, what I was making to be these big, huge moments of like stress. Which probably really, when I tell you my kids are not even, there could be another parent, that is really, really having kids with struggles, and they would look at me and be like, are you out of your mind? But I was stressed, and I'm in the bed with her, and we're watching a movie, and I'm literally like, like just sighing. I did not realize I was doing it.
Right.
And she's looking over at me at one point, and I looked at her and I'm like, what? She's like, are you good? And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what happened? Like, I just was so not present with her. She's like, you're sighing, like you're like moaning. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, it's just my son, like, whatever his name. I'm like, it's just Jake. And we're like, I'm like, I'm so stressed and whatever. And she's just looking at me and she's like, you give him no credit. Like, wow. That was all she said. And it stopped me in my damn tracks. And I was like, holy crap, you're 100% right. And that felt really awful. It felt really awful because it was really, it was really true. It was like, now there are some physical things going on. He's a boy, he's 16, his brain is that's slower than a turtle, his impulsivity is off the fucking chart. So there's some neurological, biological, evolutionary, real scientific growth stuff happening. And I also don't give him credit.
What do you mean by that then, not giving him credit? How did that unfold then? How did you know that was true?
Because I had no trust that he could make a good decision,
Mm.
which it's not like his decision making has been off, so bad that I have experience of him making bad decisions. I actually have experience of him being pretty good.
Mm.
So let me just tie this back to how this is all my shit.
Mm.
Um, and I realized also in that moment that in that case, I wasn't really walking my talk, because
Mm.
when I
Mm.
coach a person
Yeah.
and they, let's say, for example, have to have a hard conversation with a loved one,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they are talking to me about how they can set up the conversation for like all these different outcomes,
Mm.
the first thing that I say to them is, you're kind of stealing the other person's power. You're like assuming that they're not going to be able to, like, and you're taking it from them. You're like taking their,
Mm.
which I always think is really a profound thing, because
Mm.
again, like, we do that out of love, right? It's like, how can I protect this person?
Mm.
Well, in my effort to protect him from himself, what I'm doing is stealing all of his power.
So powerful.
Yeah. Well, leave it to I'm like my daughter. I'm like, well, you're brilliant. Thank you for
She
that.
knew.
Like,
Yeah, it's
I've
like that
only been studying
wisdom.
this for years, right? She's just like,
I can
you
see
have
it.
no faith in him. I'm like,
Isn't it something really, it's that objectivity, I guess, because I think when you're in it as well, and maybe when things are, to your point, when you're unconscious to it, that's when you are run by autopilot. So sometimes it takes somebody separate
yes,
looking on the situation from an objective standpoint to kind of go, can you not see this? I can see this.
totally, totally. I mean, it was really so, and I had to like excuse myself and go have a minute and really sit with
Mm.
a couple of things. I personally felt shame,
Mm.
which I allowed myself to feel, even though rationally I know that I shouldn't, because I try
No,
to accept all of the parts of myself. But
absolutely.
that one hurt. Like,
Mm.
even now that I'm thinking about it, like, it's making me emotional, because I'm like, oh
Of
my God,
course.
like, it felt icky
Of
as a
course.
parent
Yeah.
to be given the truth of that.
Yeah, of course.
Because
Because you're trying to
every
do your
reaction
best.
is to sort of do the opposite of what I was
Yeah.
actually doing.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's so powerful. It's something, I've just loaned my sister Glennon Doyle Untamed, because she'd never read it.
It's
And
another good
just
book.
exactly what you're saying, it reminds me of a chapter, and I can't probably exactly remember which chapter it was, but you'll know because I know you've read it. It's that thing that I think a lot of us, whether you're a parent or not a parent, you can fall into, because we've somehow got to this point where to love somebody is to protect them. And what we weirdly end up doing is enabling and controlling, which actually is not love.
Mhm.
Because love is allowing them and trusting them. Because to your point, it's kind of like you, through this truth bitch slap, right? It sounds like with your daughter, she was like, he's much more capable than you're giving him credit for.
Yeah. And then the minute that I work on releasing that and offering, see, the key is not just to be aware of it, because so now I'm aware that I'm doing that, but I'm also aware that I, in my heart, am carrying this fear.
Mm.
So there's still work to be done to release the fear, because once
Mm.
I can really release that and offer to
Mm.
him that I trust him and
Yeah.
that he's capable and he's going to feel and absorb all of that. And that's where the change is going to start to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that, Lauren, because I think what came up for me in that moment, because I think probably for everyone listening, I'm sure that 99% people can kind of resonate with that. Kind of that awareness of, oh wow, actually, this other person has surprised me. And when you do get that sting that's how I suppose when I experience shame for myself, it feels like a sting to begin with is the trigger, and then this dull ache that just feels really heavy in your body.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, because you and I studied energetics style of coaching, we also know that this is not just cognitive. This is energy that lives in the body. And it's interesting that you articulated, like, I'm carrying this in my heart, and I need to release this energy. So just for those listening, that you just said the awareness was first of like, all right, okay, I can see it happening. Then it seemed to be like the ownership of it, like, all right, I see it and I take responsibility for it and forgive myself, because I'm only just, I mean, you said earlier, it's kind of like you're doing your best until you know better, then you can do better.
100%.
Yeah. So what then stages, when you said there was more work to be done, if you could kind of, I suppose, help people understand, okay, what next? How the hell do you release this and actually bring it to a place where there's an opportunity for growth, I guess?
I mean, I would say that at this point, you know, where I am in my journey, even though I'm a few years in, I mean, this is very beginner.
Mm.
I'm at the beginning of this part of the journey. And you know, and there was some acceptance around that as well, right? Because I'm middle-aged and I'm like, you know, we all have ourselves in these boxes of, well, we should know everything by now.
Or the shoulding.
Right.
All about the shoulding. Yeah.
So I have just really been working on reminding myself that, you know, I could potentially have another whole half of a lifetime ahead of me. I could have another 45 years, if not more, to do this work. How much have I done, you know, to get here? And also, this is a conversation for another time. But I will say, like, in my opinion, like a strong opinion, I don't think we even scratch the surface of starting to learn adult things until our brain is formed at 25, 26 years old. So if you consider that, then I only am currently 20.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree.
This isn't 45 years of this work. This is maybe 20 years of like adult kind of, you know, like from 25 and below, you're a amoeba, you're a peon or a fetus. It's just kind of like learning. So I have very many different, you know, feelings about, you know, because that's another parenting thing is you're 18, know what you want to do, choose what you want to do, go to a college. And like I said, conversation for another time, but I don't subscribe to that.
No.
But for me, what I can say is it's the awareness and the acceptance and the choice.
Yeah.
Right. Those three things are my, that's my normal diet, right? That's my protein, veggies, carbs. Like I need, that's just the initial beginning of doing that work.
Yeah.
For me, what I feel like I specifically need, and I have my eyes open for this, is to find an energy worker or an energy healer that specifically deals with trauma.
Yeah.
Who can work on my my physical energetic body. And help me release some of that, which is work I don't specifically do, right? I can do mindfulness and I have some devices and some stuff that I use. But, you know, for me, I'm like, I want to find the professional that knows how to really kind of break this up and just start kind of dissipating and leading me through the somatic work.
Oh, it is. It's the somatics of it, isn't it? Because it's, you know, for everyone listening, it's all energy. We are energetic beings. We are made up of trillions of tiny cells that are all vibrating at different frequencies. And any trauma, be it capital T, big trauma, little t, little traumas, right? We all are experiences of some kind of trauma. And that's when, you know, some of our absolute innate needs are not being met. And that can be even before we're actually even born. That can be even when we're in vitro, right? That's, you know, it could be there too. But I think what's beautiful about what you said, and it is all about the simplicity, isn't it, of those early steps of, and the way you describe it, I love as well, because it's a practice. I think a lot of people think that this inner work stuff is like one and done,
Yeah.
which it's
I
not.
wish. Where's that person?
Exactly, right.
I want to make an appointment today.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's almost that, I think we went through a period of time. I feel like we're coming out of it now, but maybe some ways not. It's like, what's the life hack? Like, how can I shortcut this? And it's like, well, you know what? Sometimes you've just got to do the work, because
Yeah.
there's no hack to it.
I
And
tried. It doesn't exist.
yeah, exactly, right. So it is that piece around, yeah, like you say, bring the awareness to it. So, I mean, and this is the great thing about inner work, right? It's become your own observer, isn't it? I mean, I often joke to myself that it's like I'm having a little soap opera here where I have this out of body experience where I'm like, oh, look what she's doing now. But and God, you've got to bring some humor, right? Like, yeah,
that was not my best moment.
Yeah. But I think to your point, and I think something I want to highlight as well from all of the juicy golden nuggets that you're sharing, is that one of the biggest things for me about inner growth now is that all triggers, all stings, all discomfort, or things that we feel shame about, those right there are opportunities for growth.
Completely.
So we don't need to run away from them. We need to run towards them with compassionate curiosity and go, oh, looky here, something hurts. Let's look at and understand why that is.
I love that, compassionate curiosity. I do love that. And the other little piece of that too that I will say is, when people hear you and I talking about this, I feel like we can make it sound like it's easy, and that they should know that it isn't.
No. It's
And
simple. It's just not
simple,
easy.
It's not easy. And that when they are triggered and when they are feeling discomfort and when they are, that sometimes being in your feelings first, like, don't bypass it. Don't, even if you're like, okay, Christina said that if I'm feeling triggered, that it's an opportunity for growth. So what's the opportunity? But you can't even really get there because you're bypassing the feeling that you're like, take a minute, take a day, take a week, do what you need to do to feel it, and then come back to it and be like, all right, now that I'm in a place where I can kind of look at this, like, what the fuck?
No, I think it's a really important thing you raise, because I think because we live, breathe and eat this stuff all the time, I think sometimes we forget that this is absolutely brand spanking new to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think exactly what you're saying, for those people listening who maybe go, I don't even know how to sit with my feeling.
Oof, yeah.
Like, I don't even know how you would actually even begin to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, okay, that's where it is like mini baby steps to kind of just, and that's why with coaching, and certainly with energetics, it's not all cognitive thinking. Some of it is about learning to regulate your emotion by honoring and holding space for your emotion.
Honor it. I love that. I had to do it, and for us, on the sort of the flip side, or the other viewpoint of what I'm saying, is like, when we've been doing it so often, and it's like we do it as a career, so we're also teaching others, and we're kind of like in it all of the time.
Yeah.
We probably don't honor our feelings as much as we probably should, because it's kind of easy for us to do the emotional bypassing and be like, oh, where's the growth? Where I had to do that this week, where I literally was like, my body is telling me that I need to rest. I don't feel so great today for a couple of reasons, and I am going to allow myself to just rest and feel and be, and not push myself anywhere else.
Yeah. And that's huge. And I think, specifically around the parenting piece, and we say a lot, and people listening probably, know the analogy of, you can't pour from an empty cup. And the old analogy of, put your air mask on first before helping others. And I can only just imagine, because children and parent relationship would be so triggering, that you need to have some gas in your tank to be able to deal with that. So if you're constantly running on empty, That's like a recipe for disaster, right?
And I think parents, I think the world is becoming a little more conscious about being able to have these like important and vulnerable conversations around a lot of things. But
Mm,
I know that there are parents and groups of people that don't know where to get the support. But
yeah.
I just personally believe that, you know, self-care and filling yourself up, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a massage or a cup of coffee
Mm,
privately. It might be a really vulnerable conversation with your best friend where you just say what you want to say.
mm,
And I think one of the things that, when you want to talk about, um, being there for your kid and understanding, meeting them where they are and
mm,
understanding who they're becoming and learning how to accept who they're becoming, in terms of what you're saying, filling from an empty vessel, recognizing and allowing yourself to have all of your feelings without shame
mm,
is really important, because I am going to tell you, I have always loved my children to the capacity where I would throw myself in front of a
mm.
moving train, right? Most of us as parents would.
Yeah.
That does not mean that I always enjoy their company or like them as a person. That's the
Yeah.
trickiest part, right?
Yeah.
Is that you can be raising you can be raising a child that you might not choose if you had a choice to actually spend time with, because you might not love what
Mm,
they're about.
mm,
Like, just as a quick example, like,
mm,
let's talk about politics. That's
mm.
something that divides people,
Oh
right?
yeah.
What if you're like a hardcore conservative and your child is like a hardcore liberal, because those are their beliefs?
Yeah.
How do you then navigate that
Mm,
as a parent when you love this child and you're like, holy moly, I don't even want to be around them because they're just so different.
yeah.
And I think that part of getting past that
Mm,
divisiveness and
mm,
that conflict
mm,
is being able to admit to yourself,
mm, mm,
like, this doesn't feel like I'm not enjoying this person's company, and I
mm,
don't typically, or, you know, being around my child is really hard for me right now. Like, I don't we're not meant
mm,
to pretend that
mm.
everything is fine all of the time. Like,
No.
don't judge yourself for not, like, I think that's something that parents struggle with and don't say enough, right? Is that
Yeah.
when they're not enjoying their child, it feels like a
Mm,
failure. It feels really
mm. Yeah. Oh, hugely. I love that so much because and you're speaking from the heart because I can just feel it as well as hear it. And it's that acknowledgement, isn't it? I think generally speaking, for most of us in society, it's like you've got to be the perfect boss and the perfect wife and the perfect mother and the perfect friend and it's just this perfection thing just doesn't exist. It needs to just
yeah.
be eradicated because the truth of the matter is it's like
Who
we just
decided
need
what perfect even
yeah,
looks like? And
exactly.
where
I
is this
know,
person?
right? Who was that? um but I think you know it comes back to what you said before about connect before correcting
Mhm.
because another analogy that I talk about a lot but it just fits here for yourself and the other, if you can accept everything about yourself,
Mhm.
then can you accept everything about your child? Because a practice that has served me and continues to serve me, hence why I keep coming back to it all the time, is a Pema Chowdhury thing where she talks about in meditation, you are the whole sky. And whatever you're feeling or whatever thoughts you're having, they're passing weather. You have the capacity and the peace to hold space for
Mhm.
everything that's going on and just watch it like you would watch it on a screen and allow it because energy is designed to move through you. So let it go. The moment we try and go, no,
Yeah.
that's where the suffering comes in, right? Pain is optional. No, sorry, pain is necessary, right? Because
Right.
pain is life. But
Yep.
suffering really is optional. And I think the more we attach ourselves and the more we forget we're the sky, and we judge ourselves for not accepting who we are as a parent or whoever as a person. But if we also don't accept our child, that they might well be different and hold different beliefs than us, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. It's important. And I mean, I struggle, like my son, his choice of music currently. I laugh saying this because so I'm a 90s baby. I mean, I was born in the 70s, right? Grew up in the 80s, but like the 90s was like my adolescent
Your
teen,
era.
right? I mean, not really, really, it was the late 80s.
Yeah.
But we had Tipper Gore. I don't know. Do you remember? Do you know Tipper Gore? This was big.
It rings
like,
a bell. I can't place.
So this was Al Gore's wife.
Oh,
and
I did not know that.
She had this whole movement around putting like warnings on certain music because it was explicit.
Yes, right. Okay, I'm with
She
you.
was oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you
it's like
censorism.
Censorship.
Yeah. Censorship. So she was big, and we were, I was a metalhead with the flannel and the hair, and my friends and raw, we were like listening to God only. I mean, my God, if my mother, I listen to the stuff now sometimes and I'm like, this is really dark. Like my mom could have easily been like, what are you, so all these 80s videos where the moms are like, we're not going to take it and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I grew up with that.
Yes.
I am becoming that person.
Yeah.
I listen to the music that my son, he'll put it on in the car, and every cell of my being crawls. And like, I have to bite my lip sometimes because I am like, and sometimes I can't. Sometimes it comes out and I just look at him and I'm like, how can you listen to this? Like, this is repulsive. This is awful. It's like that gangster rap.
Right. Yeah.
I never listened to any. That's like, he picked the one genre. That I just cannot. And
right.
It's like his the way that he's navigating his teen years is just so, if I'm gonna look at how I want him to be, let's just say that it ain't happening. He is not what I would want him to be. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what am I thinking? I don't know what that looks like. Chess club? I have no idea. The kid that just has straight A's and comes home and is kind and helps me with dinner. And, I don't know. I don't have a vision.
No.
But I know that there are just parts of his navigating his teenagehood that make me cringe, where I'm just like, oh my God. And I have to learn.
Yeah.
And I literally will have the conversation with myself. Like, if we're in the car and he's playing the music, and by the way, there are times I'm the mom, I own the car, and I will say, I don't really like that music and I can't take it this morning.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. That's
me.
That's him honoring me, right? But on the days that I let him play it, I have to tune out. And I think to myself, if I get angry and say something picking on his music, like what is that doing to the actual relationship we have?
Yeah, it's not connecting, is it? You are not judging connecting. And
I am dissecting. Right. I'm putting, here's my wedge. I am going to drive it between us right now.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think so many parents listening can probably think of a ton of examples where it's judgment, isn't it? It's judgment of this is right and this is wrong. And I'm the parent, you're the child, so you will do as I say, right?
Rather than saying to him, like, I'm really curious, like, what is it that you like? Which I did, by the way. I did have this moment where I was like, I'm really curious. I'm really curious.
Yeah.
What is it that you like about this music? Like, what do you get out of it? And he's like, I don't even listen to the words. He's like, I just like the beat.
Right. Interesting.
Which is so funny.
Yeah.
Because I did the same thing. I heard the words. This is true story. Little Red Corvette by Prince.
Oh, yeah. I know the track.
this had to be, I'm going to say within the, literally probably within the last like 6 to 8 years,
Mm.
did I actually hear it and figure out what he was talking about.
Yeah. It's like suddenly go, oh.
Yes. And I was like a full on adult. So I'm like, all right, the chances are he probably isn't hearing what I'm hearing. Because I'm hearing it as a mom and as a woman, and I'm like cringing, and I'm like, holy moly. And he is bopping his head in his own world, like not even singing the lyrics. And
right.
so
Just,
I have to take myself and be like, all right, you know what? There's a chance he's being honest and he's not,
yeah.
Absorbing the message of this music as I did not absorb the messages from my music. So
yeah, but I think that I think that's such a great example, because it's the key of assumption, because where you're viewing it through your lens, which is a one of protection, and I don't want him to listen to da 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 da, and then that example you gave of, that's how anybody listening, right? Okay, how do you do it? How do you go from judgment to compassionate curiosity? This is how you do it. When you feel irked, you then go, interesting, I wonder. And then by asking that question, because that is a connecting question, not a correcting question, isn't it? What you shared, if like, what about it do you like tell me, share with me. That's that's moving towards, not driving the wedge, like you said.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great example. I could talk to you for all day, Lauren, all day, but to bring it to a kind of summary and close, I guess, of for those listening, and obviously this all being about change and us navigating change and having a better relationship with change. If I was to ask you your journey of going with your inner work and going from kind of, I guess, as you pointed out before, like unconscious parenting to conscious parenting, if I was to ask you kind of, I suppose, some key points, what have you learned about yourself as a parent in that process of change?
I would say I just really became aware of how I was parenting from my own needs. That the needs that I thought my kids had were all about me. In my desire and intention to parent them the best way I thought I could, it was about me. And that's not to say that I didn't honor them or, push them to do things that were about, like, in my case, it wasn't that, but it was, for me personally, and specifically for me, it was my fears. I learned very much that I was projecting my fears and my worries onto my kids.
Powerful.
As opposed to, another parent who might be projecting their wants and needs and desires onto.
It comes out in different ways, doesn't it? But I think it is that awareness of, oh, holy moly, like that's a thing. And that's something that's within your control, right? As to how you respond.
And it's a work in progress.
Yes, it will probably always will be.
Always. I'm always checking in with myself. In every interaction. Even the good ones. Even the ones that I am judging as being good. Right? Because you kind of never know what anybody else is thinking.
No, exactly.
Even in those, I'm like, did I connect there? Did I listen enough? Did I offer opinions or advice based on me that maybe won't, work for them? Like I'm constantly kind of little micro check-ins.
So the other question I want to ask, and I normally ask what it strengthened in you, but I'm curious in this instance, all of this, what has it strengthened in your relationship with your daughter and son?
So my son is I'm in it with him right now.
Right.
So that to be continued. I think sometimes I notice, I'll tell you, like so I had a big transition period for myself in the last like 2 to 3 weeks. And a big, I don't know how to really describe it, but like, I had a not so good you call it like the dark night of the soul, I kind of
Oh,
had
yes.
that for like a couple of days around how I was feeling with my
Yeah.
relationship with him, and
Mm,
just heaping loads of energetic worry onto his life. And um, then I had some conversations and kind of centered myself and brought myself back a little bit. And
mhm, mhm,
I have already noticed him coming to me more.
mm,
We were definitely avoiding each other
mhm,
for a couple of weeks. He could just feel
mm,
that he didn't want to be around me.
mm.
Super quick, by the way, you know this statistic better than I do, but the heart, and how the electricity of the heart projects even farther out, right?
Yes. Yeah. 60
I
times more powerful.
Yeah, can you say that fat, how it
Yeah, I know. I've burned it on my brain. It's something that I learned because I think your heart, when you're born, oh sorry, when you're formed in the womb, even before that, your heart develops before your brain, and the electromagnetic field around your heart of what it emits is 60 times more powerful than the electromagnetic field emitted from your brain.
So with
Boom.
that in mind,
Mm,
and how you said before, that's why I know my son can feel when I'm
yeah,
carrying this stuff in my heart.
yeah,
So a couple of weeks ago, I very much was.
yeah.
And I've worked on, and as soon as I work on just transmuting it even a little bit, he gets more attracted to me. So he has already been like talking to me a little bit more,
Mm, 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 mm.
just coming around a little bit more.
Yeah.
My daughter is very interesting because she's older now.
Mm.
Um, she is becoming very awakened and aware and conscious at such a younger age. Like I look at her and I'm like, damn, like I wish I had been that
Yeah.
at that age.
Yes.
And I
Kind of gives
still
you
have my moments
kind of gives
where
you hope for the future though, because I that's what I
yes,
see, that people are coming out of conditioning very, seems like earlier on now, which is great.
yes, yes. So that is how I would say it has, affected. And again, it is a work in progress. I am not perfection. Dr. Shafali cracks me up because she's like, I fucked up my kid. She says it. She's like, I didn't know better. I think despite our best efforts.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
it's really just becoming aware of
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
doing, when you're doing it. And,
Just
that's
take
going to
take yeah, take the expectation off. Take the that you have to do it perfectly, because you won't.
correct.
It won't,
No
because it's
matter what you
co-creative.
do,
Yeah.
somehow they're going to hate you for
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. 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 It just will just be
and
the
they'll
way.
love you as well.
So my final question to wrap it up: how has then the change of parenting style from unconscious to conscious, how, I mean, you said it before, of the ongoing work in progress that it is, but fundamentally, how has this change specifically really informed how you show up today as a parent?
I think I honor my kids' spirits more. That makes me emotional.
I was going to say that makes, I'm feeling all the feels. That
Yeah,
is emotional, because yeah, to hold that you're almost the guardian, I guess, or the space holder for your children, that, and to take it back to the beginning of the conversation when we said, like, it's like having a child can be seen as being the most narcissistic thing you can do, because it's like, I'm going to create a little mini me.
right.
Or you try and go, I'm now all of the things I haven't achieved, this little person will achieve everything that I didn't.
Right.
But instead it's about actually, and I loved how you said it, it's just like their little light force energy, it's their spirit, that it's just like, wow, I wonder, like, the infinite possibilities of who they're gonna grow into, and you
Yeah.
get to watch them blossom.
Yeah. It's it's cool. And I mean, I believe me, like I can sit here and say that with all of the conviction in the world. And 2 days from now, I can be in my bed crying because I'm terrified that they're going to make a mistake that's going to
Mm.
ruin their life, which we
Yeah.
can never know what's good and what's bad, right? Like they could make
Oh,
a mistake that profoundly changes their life and puts them on a trajectory to be a master at something
yeah.
we never. So it would just be recognizing, that they have infinite, their own infinite wisdom,
Yeah.
and trying to step back from enforcing my wisdom on them.
Yeah, it's true love. That's what I'm hearing. It's a beautiful analogy of almost, if you love a flower, you don't pick it. You know, if you come across a beautiful flower that's blooming and it's just beautiful and the sun's hitting it in exactly the right way, and you just think, oh, you know, that's beautiful. If you were to pick it, then it would die. So it's that control thing, isn't it? It's just like, are you going to let it blossom in its beauty? And, you know, as a parent, I guess, okay, make sure it's getting enough light, make sure it's getting enough water, right? But ultimately, you're watching it blossom.
You know, that's really interesting too, if you want to look at it that way, because we just have, and again, it comes from the best place most times as a parent, right?
Yeah.
We think we know what is best for our kids, and what do we want for them to be successful and to be happy.
Yeah.
Well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What does success even, right? Because it's successful to one person is successful to a different person. If you have this beautiful flower and you pick it because it's so beautiful and you want to keep it, you're making it all about yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's where it becomes hard, and the thing to kind of start learning to really go with the flow of change.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good way to kind of bring this back, right?
Love it.
Because your kid, every time you get comfortable with where your kid is, something's going to change. That was my first foray into like, oh, like just when I got used to like, now they're on a sleeping and eating schedule, and then they start fucking walking, and I'm like, oh, don't walk, you're making it hard, you know, like it is hard. And you took the responsibility on when you decided. So it's not meant to be easy, but it can be easier than you're making it if you learn this.
Yeah, which is like an analogy for life, isn't it? Right? It's how painful and how much suffering do you want it to be?
It's just easier to go with the flow than it is to resist.
Yeah, it's isn't it? A lot of allowing and a lot of curiosity.
A lot of allowing.
Compassionate curiosity. Well, I have just absolutely loved this conversation, Lauren.
Thank you. I love you. This was so fun. Thank you.
Right back at you. No, I mean, I think just to end, you know, if anybody wants to connect with Lauren, obviously she shared such a lot of passion. This is definitely something, Lauren, you are here to do to help parents. And what I especially love is your honesty, and is you know, just sharing exactly what you're experiencing. You know, because I think that's just priceless in terms of, you know, anyone listening who's kind of navigating or has navigated these choppy waters. My God, don't you just need someone to kind of go, yeah, it's really hard, but here's some tools that can help you.
And like, you're not some broken, selfish person to feel the way that you feel. Like this is hard work, y'all.
Yeah. Well, I love it. So all of your, we'll make sure that all of your contact details and everything are in the notes below. But I would obviously encourage anyone who's navigating the choppy waters with parenting, just connecting versus correcting your child. Do get in touch with Lauren, because as you've already learned today, she is knowledgeable, but she's actually also practicing this readily as well, which just makes it even more powerful. Yeah. Thank you.